Hello, beautiful ladies. Welcome back to the new home of Women's Hour. Is this playing on my... Uh-oh. Hello, beautiful ladies. I've got it playing on my own thing again. What a nightmare. And not only that, something else is playing too. Okay, I've muted my PC. I haven't actually closed it. What a beautiful start to Women's Hour. A very low-tech intro and technological mishaps all over the place. But if that's not what women are known for, what are we known for? That's what we're here to discuss tonight. And with me, as always, my beautiful panel of beautiful ladies. Let's start with... let's go out of my solo layout.
No, it's just me.
Hello, I'm back. Remove myself from the stream there. Yeah, Birdie, why don't you say hello to everyone?
Good evening. Yes, hello. Lovely start to the show there, Poe. I appreciate the ad lib.
It's all a character. I come across as completely scatterbrained as a kind of a charming quirk. Actually, it's all very scripted.
Of course it is. We're obviously 100% organised when it comes to Women's Hour.
Amy, everyone was so distraught that you were not present at the last one. They were practically in tears. I hope you had a nice rest last week.
It's all right. It feels like just yesterday.
Comes around quickly, doesn't it, our Fridays? And Cow's making a return appearance. Thank you very much for joining us in the middle of the day for you.
Yeah, great. Hello, everyone.
Great. Well, I'm so glad to have a full panel. I feel like 4 is so robust, and I feel so safe being the safety net of all of you three. And today, I guess, since it's a fresh start for Women's Hour, and since we kind of got into a bit of a scrape last week, talking about like what are we even doing here? Like what is the function of women in the intellectual space if we're not going to be head-to-head contending with men? And it's my contention that rather than being embarrassed or trying to make up for our inadequacies in the masculine reasoning department, or cold intellectual analysis, that rather we should embrace the things that make us feminine and try to make a feminine version of what would you call it, a political live stream. But we don't even really talk about politics that much. It's sort of a lifestyle and social hour every week. So I want to, I guess I'll open up the floor to my panelists and ask, like, what is the point of Women's Hour? Like, what are we doing here? What is the point of women even talking? Like, shouldn't we just get back to making babies and making sandwiches?
What's the point of women?
What is the point of women? Amy, go on.
Well, I have quite strong feelings about this, which I have expressed privately in like our group chat, and I do think that it's just to try and do the same kind of things as men. We're just going to do that suboptimally, aren't we? And so I just think that, they complain about dresses when we talk about dresses. They complain that when we do talk about things that aren't feminine, that we don't do it properly. And I just think that women and men are different fundamentally in the way we think and the way we interact with each other and with the way we interpret the world. We're just so much more inward looking, and we just sort of we ebb and flow like the tides, and we reflect our light like the moon. We don't create our own light. We're not here to do that. And I think that when men expect that from us, then they're no better than our feminists and transhumanist overlords. That's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Birdie, have you got any? You're usually the most predisposed to what would you say? A more masculine side, a more feisty, less of a pushover version of femininity. Is that a good way to summarize you to people who've never seen Women's Hour before?
Somewhat to a certain extent, maybe. Definitely not a pushover. I'll take that. I do agree with Amy on quite a lot of things there, actually. Although I would say I am, I do obviously believe in the traditional views, but I think that we do need to be able to have our view on the side of things. We've had a lot of men listening to Women's Hour saying, they do listen to hear our side of it. They want to hear our opinion, which obviously we have a lot of, being women. Naturally, we have opinions. But I wouldn't say we should be embarrassed by having, either not the same level opinions as the men do. We've covered this before on Women's Hour previously. Men and women do think differently. Our brains work differently. That's just biological. There's not exactly a lot we can do about that. But I do think it is good to hear the women's side of things sometimes. But I do agree with Amy. We don't want to go into the feminist side of things. That's a bit too far. We're not going to go that far.
All right, Cows, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, on what Birdie was saying, it's not a matter of whether what we're saying is superior or inferior to what the men are saying. It's the fact that, one, it's a lot different. We're women. And the fact that we are saying anything at all, it's very important that women with the views that we have, the influences that we have, the interests that we have a space that, is a feminine space. It's not completely natural for women to only be in male spaces. So I think it's very important that we have a space to call our own, say our own ideas. Definitely we can take influence from men, and men may take influence from us, and vice versa. And yeah, it's just, I think this is a very beneficial thing that we have here.
Good. I'm glad you're all excited about the Women's Hour project, which no longer an experiment as it was on the Academic Agents channel. It's now a full-on project. I've decided that's what I'm calling it, the Women's Hour project.
Right.
And
determination. I like it.
I've got a theory of feminine archetype, what it means to be the ideal woman, that I'm going to put forward. But before we get onto that, segueing very elegantly from what Birdie and Cows and Amy have been saying, I'd like to open it up to our audience. I want to shamelessly profit from these streams. And the plan that I've come up with is that starting this week, and we'll see how it goes, if the gentlemen behave themselves, or whoever's in the chat who'd like to send a super chat, I want to get suggestions for topics from the audience. If you send a super chat and you say at the start of it, topic suggestion or just topic, and then tell me what you want us to talk about, we can talk about it next week. And we could give it an hour. It can't be more than an hour because it's Women's Hour. It's only an hour long. It certainly won't be more than an hour, but it won't be any less than 5 minutes. So that's what you'll get. You don't know what you're going to get, but you can suggest a topic in a super chat and we will cover it, but only if it is the highest paying super chat of the stream. So we're having an auction. We'll see how it goes. So if you want to get in there early, do like a 99p super chat. You might win. Who knows? Just go for it.
Don't set the bar that low, Poe. You got to say it higher than that. Come on.
I'm just saying, it's an auction. It's like eBay, right? You see like something you want and it only costs like $1.99. You don't know how much it's going to go for.
I think AA might have retweeted your link, Poe.
Oh, that's nice of him.
I believe AA is currently in the chat. So AA, if you want to send a super chat to your fellow Women's Hour team.
Someone said Poe to him.
Yeah, well, please do. Yeah, any topic at all, as long as it's safe. It's it has to be safe for YouTube. Okay, don't be silly. If you're asking a question so edgy and so spicy that we can't possibly answer it without being done for hate speech or something, we're just gonna have to do like a really perfunctory, like a classic neocon response. We're not gonna indulge any questions that are just too silly. Be sensible, guys. And don't put me in the sticky situation where I have to answer questions I don't want to answer. But we will be classy about it. Questions about sex and relationships, they're all fine. We're not going to be going into the really messy nuts and bolts of it all. This is a classy show. But I'm curious to see what you guys are going to... if you want us to review a book, review a film... I can't promise that we'll all read the book, but some of us might. A film, I think we could definitely all manage to watch within a week, or some of us could, and review that. If you want us to review, there was talk on Twitter of us reviewing 40k lore, which is something that my husband has said he can participate in. We've already got super chats coming in. We will review those at the end of the stream. And like I say, the highest paying super chat will get a topic on next week's stream. So think about that. Think carefully about it. Send in your super chats before the end. I believe you can also send super chats when we're not even streaming. It's called like super thanks or whatever. I don't know if we'll be able to count those, but we'll see if that comes up. With that out of the way, here is my theory of female, I will call it like female excellence, or the lack of female excellence, we could say. We've talked about this a little bit on the stream before. Let me just find the tab I opened, because I do prepare a little bit for this show. Here's a Google Images I found. This is the a very popular theory in, what would you call it, in evolutionary science, in biology, about the differences. One of the main differences between men and women, other than all the obvious stuff, there's this phenomenon. I think it's called the Variability Theory, which is this lovely fat green soft curve. This is women. This green line here, this distribution bell curve. Beautiful soft curve to represent women here. It's wide and it's short. That's the most important thing. Oh no, sorry, this is men. Excuse me. You've confused me with the color coding.
Wide and short as women.
Let's call it stout. We'll call it the stout curve. It's more masculine, isn't it?
Well,
sorry, the green.
I'm glad you're not going to say the big, tall, pointy one's a man.
No, the beautiful slender one is a lady. So this beautiful blue slender curve, this is women, and it isn't any one particular trait, although it is a trait. You know, IQ, for instance, to have one measurable, quantifiable trait, you could take IQ, for example. Women are average. They are more average than men. And this is kind of a difficult concept to understand. If you've watched Jordan Peterson talk about male and female differences, you'll understand this. But the point is that women are much less represented in the extremely high and the extremely low. And that goes for things like criminality, any extremes of human behavior. You'll see more men than there are women. So extremely intelligent men, and also extremely stupid. What's the politically correct way of saying mentally deficient? You get many. There are lots and lots of boys who can't read at adult age, or at at age 11, compared to girls who do are very well at these sorts of things. So some of these differences between men and women are differences in average. For instance, interest in your babies versus interest in Dwarf Fortress. This is not a difference in average. This is these averages are different. They're very, very far apart in terms of men and women. But a lot of these differences can be explained just by the fact that income distribution is another one. Lots of very, very, very wealthy, very, very productive men, and also you get a lot of. Can you see my cursor? Where I'm actually circling these. Lots of very unproductive, very low earning men who are just completely useless. Women are much more average. They do fine, and we go into this biologically, but basically because not all men get to breed, and most women do. Historically, in the history of human evolution, if you're a woman, then you're worth a pump and dump for a man, to put it bluntly. You might end up raising those kids on your own, and not all of them will survive for that reason. But the fact is that a man, he has to persuade at least one woman to reproduce with him in order to have his genes propagated. So for male genes, it's worth this kind of pot shot technique, where you can be you might end up with a really, really great role. To put this into video game or tabletop gaming nomenclature, when you roll a character, men are like a much more higher risk. You could get a good one or you could get a bad one. Women, you're pretty much going to get it's going to be fine. You'll be fine. Women are all going to be breedable to at least some extent. So that's just a little human biology 101. I don't know if this is also true for other animals. I'm not going to go into that now. But this is basically, I just wanted to give that brief to explain why I believe that in pretty much every facet of human experience and human endeavor, men are men excel. They're at the very, very high ends of what is humanly achievable. That's architecture, poetry, music, art. Everything. There's no female Mozart, and it's not because of sexism. It's because men are. And there's also no female serial killers. If that makes you feel better, women. There aren't as many female homeless people. That's for other reasons, obviously, too. But women just aren't really on this earth to be really, really the absolute best at things, or even in the top 1% of things. When you get to that tail end of excellence, women just aren't there. Or if there's 100 of the best scientists in the world in a room, one of them might be female, and it is kind of depressing, especially if you've been raised on feminism. But even in the very female, I'm going to let you girls talk soon, but I just wanted to finish off. Even in things that are very feminine, like cooking or makeup, fashion, interior design, these very feminine endeavors, we've talked about this before on Women's Hour, men are dominate the very, very top ranks of those pursuits. And it's kind of depressing as a woman, I think. But, here's the but. I believe women, we don't need to be excellent because we can be loved. So that's my cope. Amy, I believe you've got some deep thoughts on this, and I want to hear what you have to say. Go on.
Yes, I agree with you with this, but it just sounds like you've been watching a lot of Ed Dutton recently, and I don't think that
pick up on that, Amy, because I think a lot of other people picked up on that too.
I don't think that IQ, is this be all and end all of what we were put on this earth for.
Forget IQ. Look, okay. There's no female Mozart. There's no female Michelangelo or Da Vinci. There's just.
These are all historical figures. So in terms of now there are a lot more female, entrepreneurs, etc. going forward.
But they're not as good as women. They're not as good as male ones, right? Are they?
I wouldn't know. I haven't looked into it. But I think what I would say is that it is in a man's nature, as we've discussed before in Women's Hour, to strive to be better than the man next to them. Whereas women, we have a bit of henpecking amongst ourselves, but we're not, unless you're a feminist, you're not going to strive to be better than the man next to you, better than the woman next to you, because a lot of women, their main goal in life is to settle down. They're not going to strive to have this massive job or anything that's doesn't feel natural to them. Does that make sense?
Sure. I mean,
but when you think of this bell curve distribution of masculinity, spread the sort of bell curve of male intelligence, and then the smoother one of a sharp one of female intelligence, and the smoother one of male intelligence, and how there's extremes on that, and it's there might on those charts there might be no female extremes. But when you think about other female extremes, other extremes in other aspects of personality, is that not the case that there are?
Like what?
For example, women being completely just considerably more. I don't want to say. I guess agreeability is there, but women who are just pathologically agreeable, for example. I don't buy that there aren't feminine extremes, and I think that part of the issue that we have is there's such an emphasis placed on feminine extremes at the moment.
There is definitely a way for women to have extreme versions of moderate behaviour. If you looked at women on a bell curve on their own, it's not like they're all average. Maybe I'm overstating this. There are extremes of everything on either end. You get extremely disagreeable women, you know, psychopathic women as well, even though it's more predominant in men. I don't know. I guess regardless of the bell curve stuff, I thought I would be able to sell you guys on this, but I guess not. But regardless of that, are we now saying that women can be excellent in certain fields, and if they can, if are there fields that women can beat men in, or are we saying what Birdie says, which is they just don't fancy, they're not as competitive, women just don't fancy going after these things with such a single-mindedness?
We're in this weird place as a society where you've got like, we still have for everyone sort of male, the things that are held up for women to excel at are things that are traditionally male, right? Like achievement, creation of beauty, things that are constructive, leadership roles. But then at the same time as that, we have this sort of denigration of anything that is masculine. So we're in this weird position where we're putting these encouraging these extremely female personality traits and archetypes as into extremely masculine roles, and it's this sort of melding of the two which I think is particularly destructive. I think that when it comes to, you know, it's not a bad thing for women to just not like for there just to be less clever women than there are clever men, for there to be just less creative women than there are creative men, to be less like rational, because it doesn't matter. Why would you know, that's like saying, you know, criticizing an orange for not being an apple. I just think it's like it's completely besides the point. I don't see why it should even be a contention whether or not women can be as exceptional as men, because that's not the point. It's not what women are there for. It's not what they're there for. Whether you believe in things from an evolutionary perspective, and it's not there for if you believe from a religious perspective either, any religious perspective. It just shouldn't even be a point of contention.
Absolutely agree. Yes, even though I came to from a different route, I think you're absolutely right. That's the exact point I wanted to make, is that we're not you know, apples and oranges. Basically, we're to put us on the same playing field is to make a categorical error, as they say.
May I hop in? Is my mic better?
It's all right. It's good enough, but not perfect.
All right. Apologies for that. I'm not really sure what's causing that. I hope I'm understandable at least. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the basis for a lot of my thinking is that we are definitely not above nature, and you can find a lot of truths by looking at nature and comparing it to humanity. Obviously, they're very different, but the males are mostly the ones to show off, to like attract mates, like male peacocks, for example, having the most vibrant, biggest, colorful feathers, and for lions, who's the most dominant one of the tribe. Women or I guess female species are there for a purpose, that is to reproduce and provide for the young, and definitely not saying that's the only reason why we're here, and that there's not outliers. Even in nature there are outliers of females, but I mean, it's just like Amy was saying, it's not something that you can 100% compare. It's you need to have a bit of nuance when approaching that topic, in my opinion.
Okay. With that decided, I'm glad you guys agree. I guess what I wanted this show to be... Sorry, Birdie, I think we skipped you, but did you have anything to add before we move on a little bit?
I do pretty much agree with all of you ladies, and I definitely agree with what Amy said in terms of the jobs that are advertised for women, in terms of being the more masculine jobs, you know, the builders, etc. They're pushed towards women, and I don't see why, because as Amy said, there are a lot of jobs that men do which are more feminine based, that women can do better. So, yeah, no, I completely agree with what everyone said so far.
I don't know if I want to get too personal here about my own experience, but I have 2 older brothers, and I believe that I think we'll have to interview my mum at some point when we have no other topics to discuss on Women's Hour, because I did an interview with her on YouTube a while ago. But I believe her parenting technique, her strategy, was to raise me just like she'd raised my 2 brothers before me and with me. And we had to talk, in terms of sex and puberty and all of that. She didn't treat me like I was a boy. But she was, she was and is a feminist, and describes herself that way. And I believe she didn't think that it was necessary to teach me anything different or new that she didn't teach my brothers. And I don't think that was. I think she was a very good mother. I just want to say that. I'm not saying that she was negligent in her duties. She taught me Bible stories. She taught me nursery rhymes. She taught me to love music. She taught me to love reading. She taught me to love God. She was a wonderful mother. And yet, I think there was a gap in that she never taught me to be a woman. As a girl, or as a teenager, when I was going through all these changes, I was never taught to be a mother. I don't have any younger siblings, so I never got to see her being a mother except to me. And I don't know what her mother taught her, but I feel like there has been an unbroken chain of mothers teaching daughters how to be good women. And not all mothers will do this, and not all will be good at it. But I feel like I could have been better prepared for this role. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't enjoy cooking. I didn't love food. I didn't really think of that as a way of expressing love. Same with keeping a house. With dressing myself, I never learned to put on makeup, and I still don't wear makeup, which I think is fine. I like that about myself, actually. But just one of these things. And I now have 2 daughters, for anyone who doesn't know. They're still only little girls right now, and I don't worry too much about teaching them to be ladies or being feminine, or teaching them about puberty or boys or anything like that. They're just little kids right now. I'm not worried about it. But one day I'm going to be having to teach them, or lead by example, how to be a good woman so that they can be good women, and I hope one day be good mothers. And I'd like Women's Hour to be a place for us to, talk about news, talk about ideas, talk about art, whatever we want to talk about, but all within the frame of what does it mean to be a good woman in the year 2022. And we're not going to be talking about the 50s or the 1850s or what is like the traditional way of doing things, although that will be, I guess, one resource that we can draw on. But I want us to talk about what is a good standard of female behaviour that we can all aspire to, and that my daughters will one day look to me, I hope, to aspire to. Does that sound fun? Mm-hmm. Does that sound entertaining?
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely lean on that, Poe. And having the standard there, and naturally, I think all girls look up to their mothers without even realizing we do naturally do it. On the flip side, I'm one of 3, but I've got a brother and a sister. So we kind of had a bit of both, but I always remember there are some things that my mum didn't cover naturally, but I do think that's a lot to do with the sign of the times. Really, it is just the year that we're in. It's not normal as such to grow up teaching your daughter how to keep a house and be feminine and etc. etc. Although I do think there are still key things they need to know. But I think everyone needs to know how to cook, how to look after themselves. So there is a standard there that I think does need to be kept, and I do think that's been lost throughout the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone? Go on, Amy.
I don't think that's like an issue with your mum per se, or even to do with gender. I think we're told, everyone is told, men are told, boys are told, girls are told, you know, you can just, if you just try hard enough, you can do anything that you want to do, which isn't the case for women pursuing feminine pursuits and men pursuing masculine pursuits. It's just not the case. People have natural limitations, and I think that the most important thing in life is to just come to terms with your natural limitations and to work within them and not try to transcend them in any way. I think that is the main thing that has been lost. I think that's the way things have a problem that is across genders. I think my question though would be like, what relation do you think that there is between the sort of, you know, you said I wasn't taught how to wear makeup and I don't wear makeup still, and I think that's fine. Like how important do you think that actually is for femininity? And there was something else, and it's gone out of my mind. I'll bring it up when I but those are the physical aspects of femininity. How important do you think that actually is?
Well, beauty, I think, you know, if you think about what are the feminine traits, often in the negative, I think the most negative female traits are usually extreme versions of a positive female trait. I think it's the same with masculinity to an extent. So you might say women are shallow compared to men, which is probably true in extreme cases. That, you know, you can see a lot of women who go too far and are too shallow. But I think in the positive way, women are interested in beauty. It's just a more positive way of saying that. And it's true that most adult women in our society, and pretty much every society where their faces aren't literally covered by burqas all the time, women like to wear makeup, or they like to keep their faces clean at the very least. People in general, and women in particular, like to keep their faces looking pretty and clean. So because that's the place that people look when they're talking to you. They look at your face, and that is how they'll judge you. And like I said, that can go too far to be shallow or vain. Women who spend hours in front of the mirror and, you know, they become distraught over getting a black head or a bad hair day. But I think that's not in a moderate state of wearing makeup. That's not a bad thing. And I've come to look at all feminine traits in this way. Things that I used to think were like lame about girls, you know, when I used to be in my like I'm not like other girls tomboy phase, and like, oh, girls are lame. Like, can you imagine wearing makeup and, you know, spending hundreds of pounds on a dress? Like, how ridiculous is that? These are all things I think that we've, you know, are somewhat pathologized in modern thought, that I think you know, maybe we're engaging in femininity apologetics on this stream. Sorry, was that a question? I can't remember what you said, Amy. I think there's nothing wrong with makeup. Is what I was saying.
No, I mean, are those physical aspects of femininity? Are they the most important thing? I mean, if you think about like most women I know, you know, do spend a lot of time in making themselves attractive, but that doesn't make them feminine. They still.
Do you think that there's something that they need to be taught? Is that what you're?
Well, and that's another thing is, you know, are these things that, I mean, did you find that these things just sort of came out of you? Like you said, when was the first time you ever realized that you wanted to cook in order to express your love for someone? Like, did that not just happen?
I guess you're right. Yeah, when I started cooking, I realized that it wasn't a chore; it was a a gift. So yeah, the doing came first, and then the learning. I guess that's a kind of feminine way of doing things. No, I think you're absolutely right. Is that it? You know, putting on makeup doesn't make you feminine, but it's more feminine than it is masculine, I think. And it can go too far.
Can I interject there, Per?
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, having makeup and things like this, and in terms of being taught the feminine, the more physical aspects of femininity, so makeup, the way you dress, makeup in such, I don't think is something that can be or should be taught in such by your mother or by the woman figure in your life.
Women on TikTok, is that who I should be learning from, Birdie?
No, absolutely not.
Gay men on TikTok.
Gay men on TikTok. Yeah. No. So as I've just said, I do have an older sister, and growing up, she was very much the very feminine one. She wore a lot of makeup. She always wore fancy clothes. She had a lot more clothes than me. She was one of these people who would wear an outfit once and never wear it again. Whereas I wear the same outfit over and over again. There wouldn't be tons of them. I never wore tons of makeup growing up, but I never. I was a bit of a tomboy, but I never considered myself to be not feminine, because if I was going out, I'd still make an effort to make look like a female. And by that I don't mean dressing so you've got your legs out or your cleavage out. I just mean dressing like a woman, or like a girl at the time. So those types of physical aspects of femininity is something that I do think should be taught by the woman figure in your life. Be able to teach them to dress appropriately, and if they do want to wear makeup, then that's okay, but don't wear it to the amount where it completely changes your face. I am guilty of wearing a fair amount when I do go out, as Poe might remember from the last event, but I do enjoy wearing it on occasion, whereas everybody who met me over the Steam Fair weekend will back me up on saying I wasn't wearing any makeup at all. So there is that jump, but at the same time, you all know I'm a woman, so that aspect of physical femininity does need to be taught, but there is a line as to how far it should go, I think.
I think it's also like a responsibility of femininity itself to understand the time and the place for that kind of thing. Like you were saying, how you would dress up to go to a special event is a lot different than how you would dress like going outside and doing
just
labor, for example.
Absolutely.
And I think that's true for many aspects of femininity. It's obviously there is a time and a place for anything, and like many of us are saying before, maybe we didn't get a chance to learn those homemaking aspects, and it was because maybe our mothers didn't have the time in their day to do that. Maybe they worked. Maybe that was the example they put on for their daughters. I mean, I can relate. My mom was never home, and with that, she kind of raised me to be a version of herself by putting me in a trade school. And I didn't learn very many feminine skills until I approached adulthood, because that's just not what the emphasis was on my upbringing. It was about what was going to fit, I suppose, the style that my family was going for at the time. And I think many parents, especially those of like late boomer and like early Gen X age, kind of raise their daughters in a similar way.
Thank you, Cows. To come away from just talking about the physical aspects that we said, I think there's much more here. I really don't know how women used to do it, but I feel like at some point in my life I should have learned how to conduct myself, not in a especially feminine way, but just in a proper, polite way, as a woman, which is slightly different to how to be polite and proper as a man, as an adult, as a teenager, whatever it is. I don't know if this is a place that we can explore that. Having, I expect none of you received a proper, finishing school etiquette education, the way that young ladies might have once in these, upper class institutions. But I feel like that would have been something that was really useful. Is just to have some lessons in how to be charming, shall we say, how to meet someone for the first time, like how to. This sort of etiquette that I think is very much lost. I'm reading The Abolition of Britain at the moment by Peter Hitchens, and there's a lot of this stuff about ceremony, decorum, and manners. The way that there used to be a proper way to address others, to conduct yourself, that is just kind of lost. Is it appropriate to blow your nose in public, for instance? These questions that seemed like that I wouldn't even think of before. It's like, I need to blow my nose, so I'll do it. And most people do, and also just things like what to wear, so stuff like that.
That's really interesting because both of my parents are very boomer truth, shall we say, and they did to some extent bring me up with a lot of these sort of values, but that sort of aspect of it, and especially how to interact with males and the danger that males are and the difference in the way they think from the way I think and how I should, for example, dress and behave around them, was something that was instilled in me from a very young age. And that was something that was done as an aspect of safety, as an aspect of looking after simply looking after myself, of not putting myself in danger around men.
Is that something that were you sat down to talk about that, or was it like a sitcom where you were like walking out the door and your dad said, "Come right back here, Amy. You're not going out in that."
It was a combination. It was a combination of the two. Yeah.
I find that quite interesting.
And it also was to do with just how to, manners and how to. I mean, in real life, I'm quite a socially awkward person. So in general, in how to conduct myself, that always was something that my parents. No, I didn't do that. That is something that my parents put a lot of emphasis on from a young age.
See, on the flip side of that, in terms of general etiquette out in public, there is obviously, I'm sure everyone here knows, and people who are listening, if you haven't heard, there's a running joke that I'm Demelza from Pole Dog. My etiquette in public is I am quite blunt when it comes to people. If people are nice to me, I'm nice to them. I will introduce myself or say hello if I feel comfortable. But with things like blowing your nose in public or wiping your mouth properly, things like that, I learned from my parents. If we were ever out, they would say, "Oh, do it," like they'd kind of say on the sly. They wouldn't make it obvious. But I learned a lot just through watching them and their general etiquette, which I think has a lot to answer for. If I absolutely hate the whole demeanor behind do as I say, not as I do. I can't stand that because I learn through watching people. I'm very much a practical person, as I said. So I learned through watching my parents. You look up to your parents, you look up to the people around you. So if they're acting in a certain way, then you expect your children to act the same way as well. If they're being polite when they're out or talking to people a certain way, that's how you're going to do it.
Yeah, that's been shown, I believe, by experimentation, is that children who are taught one thing and their parents do something else, they will just always do what the parent is doing, not what they're saying, which is utterly frustrating to the parent, I'm sure, when, if it's something like swearing, where that's something I kind of struggle with. I try to keep a clean mouth on stream, but sometimes with the more extreme ends of my day, it's hard not to swear in front of my daughter, who's now completely verbal and who copies the way I talk.
Yeah, see, I wasn't allowed to swear at all growing up. And that was purely just because my mum always used to tell me it wasn't very ladylike to swear. She'd always say that to me. And if, as I got into my older years, 18 onwards, even if she meets me now, if I'm drinking any drink, a bottle of beer or something out of a bottle, she will always remind me to put it in a glass because it's not ladylike. I get told off for this on a constant basis. But, there are certain traits that are just down to the person, I think, such as drinking beer out of a bottle. My mum never did that. Even my dad never did that. He'd always put it in a glass. But majority, I think, is a lot down to learning what you see.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to point that out, actually. In the absence of proper introduction to these kinds of ideas, I think I ended up picking up a lot of bad habits from watching TV, and especially American TV as well. Watching Friends was a show that I loved pretty much from the age of 10 to 15. I think I watched every episode like more than 5 times. It was the same for a lot of people. On Channel 4 they played it about 5 times a day, and even though I never I was never one of those people who said all the catchphrases and actually spoke in a very Monica or Rachel kind of way. I think there were things that I picked up from Friends and from other TV shows like that were just like, this is the way to be an attractive young woman. Like, this is the behavior that men like, that they find attractive. This is the kind of lifestyle. You can sleep around and have many partners. They're all going to be fairly mild-mannered, gentle gentlemen. They're not going to attack you or be very mean. And at the end of it all, you still have a husband waiting for you at the end of the aisle when you're 30-something and you're ready to settle down. I think I can't remember if we talked about this on Women's Hour explicitly, but I think we're all familiar with these unrealistic expectations of what it, that kind of lifestyle and the kind of marriage you can expect to have at the end of it. And
I got the brutal truth from it there, Poe, because my mum point blank said, "It's on telly, it's not real." Which
but it looks so real.
It was. I think it did help in that aspect. And then I started reading books, and it became my escapism. With these little stories that you hear, and they've all got happy endings. And in truth, we know they're not true. But I do think you've got to be brutal at some point and point blank tell them what's real and what's not, just to protect them in a way.
I know it's hard. It's easy to know that it's fake when it's Harry Potter. You go, okay, magic isn't real. There's no Hogwarts letter coming for you. I understand that.
That feels like a dig, though.
No, I didn't mean it's not.
But even then, like, as an American, watching stuff like Harry Potter and stuff that came from across the pond, we would always just kind of make fun of the whole etiquette in those types of shows, that type of media. I feel like it's a very American thing to kind of neglect and even look down upon having etiquette, proper manners, that kind of thing. It's a very American mentality to act for utility. What is the easiest thing to do? What is the most productive thing to do? Rather than, quote, wasting your time on things that don't really matter. That's just how it's kind of perceived here. And I think that, especially during like the Industrial Revolution era, we lost a lot of that etiquette that we retained from most of the people who emigrated here to adopt more of a less thoughtful society, I guess you could say.
I think etiquette has a lot to do with just general manners out in public. I do think the two are very closely related.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know if this is for sure. I have a theory that perhaps the decline in what we can call etiquette and manners is part of the very modern way that we don't want to make anyone feel bad. So to emphasize standards in manners and etiquette, you have to therefore punish or degrade or what's these modern words they use? You're committing a microaggression against people who don't know those rules or who were raised in a family where they weren't taught. It's like you're strutting around, like imposing your privilege on other people. This idea that being taught manners is a privilege that not everyone has the benefit of.
I think that etiquette has just been transmuted into a new etiquette for a new regime, which is things like microaggression, knowing all of these little rules of what you can and cannot say, and what isn't acceptable, and who isn't part of the sort of client group, and who isn't part of the so-called privileged group. That is just a new etiquette. When you read all of these like books that are coming out by like certain usually female authors, they're essentially like, the ones that are advertised as being like LGBTQ or queer or black. These things, they're essentially just like tales of manners, but modern manners, right? They're the same thing, but they've just been applied to something bad.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Now that you mention it, that's a very good point. Thank you.
Honestly, well, it's along the same lines, but in terms of having manners and etiquette, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that there are more manners and more etiquette, not in different social classes, but I do think there are more manners and more etiquette in smaller communities than there are in larger ones. Because even if you, in a smaller community, even if you hate your neighbour, you will still make the effort to say good morning because you may have to rely on them one day. or you may end up helping each other out. In terms of in a larger community, in a town or a city, I mean more so than in a city, things are more convenient, so you don't need the person next door, so there's no need to be polite to them.
That
I would
too,
also
and just
disagree
because of
with
how densely
Sam.
populated they are, is if you're walking down the street in a city, for example, you can act however you want because the people walking by you, you're probably never going to see them again. They're just people walking by, you know?
I feel like I've started an argument here. Go on, Amy.
No. I'm going off of what you said. I agree.
No, I mean, I lived in Glasgow for about seven years, and I would disagree with that. You know, I recently stayed in a very small town large village in Wales, and I thought that all of the locals were like extremely rude compared to like somewhere like Glasgow where people are just extremely friendly. Like I was walking down, like I was out for a walk along the Clyde, and there was this like sort of group of like 3 men, like young men, sort of squatting around in tracksuits drinking like Buckfast under a bridge, and they all like stood up politely and sort of as I went past, and then they went back to like squatting and drinking, right? And once I was like walking across the road, and admittedly this man was having a wee while using a cash point, and as we were sort of going across the pavement on about 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, I just kind of stepped over it, and he went, "Sorry about that, darling." Like I don't think that. No, I don't agree with that. Where I live, I don't live in a particularly small town, but there is. I think it's more to do with how cohesive the community is, as opposed to the size of the community.
Yeah, so leaning on what Cal said, do you think it's more? So you were saying, Amy, when you went and visited Wales, people were rude. Do you think that's more, not because you're English, as the comment just said, but do you think it may be more because they don't know you? So rather than being a face that they may, see or recognize, even if they don't know you or they've seen you once or twice, because even though, down here everyone is pretty much, 100% polite to a certain extent, but if we do have tourists down, there are a select few who will treat them differently to how they treat tourists. So how they treat people they don't know. They won't be rude as such, but they will act differently around them.
Yeah.
Well, Alex had lived in that village since he was about 10 years old, and he said, well, if you go into that shop, they just will refuse to speak to you in English.
Classic Welshman.
That's just how they are, then.
There's no accounting for Wales.
Even to these people who live there, who have lived there for years.
Mm.
I feel like with that, there's definitely an element of outsiders and who they see as their own. And even in small towns, there can be a sort of competitiveness if there's 2 types or 2 like select groups of people living in that town. I think kind of going on what Birdie was saying, like they might have treated you that way, or you might have had that experience because in a small place like that, it's very obvious, an immediate recognition that you are an outsider to that place if they haven't seen you before.
But then I was, it's something that someone who'd lived in that place for over a decade pointed out.
We're coming up to an hour now, so I think we need to review the super chats. But before we do that, I want to have what I hope will be a weekly segment. I tried to introduce it a few weeks ago. We might have some music for it at some point if I figure it out. We're going to have our weekly Laney. Anyone remember this segment? The weekly Laney. It's time.
Laney's not a real name.
I expect it's not. Okay, you can see the tabs, but I don't think we're doxing ourselves with that. This is the latest Laney. Completely natural summer things. Yes. Is that bigger?
Is this the one on certain body types and etc.?
Yeah, it's usually that or something like that. There's usually not very much. You have to read the text next to it. Just the comic is fine. I'll just read it for anyone not watching. Completely natural summer things is the title. Chafing thighs, frizzy hair, sweat patches, and any kind of sweat. And as you can imagine, I won't describe the pictures, but they're just as laney and just as a little bit gross as you can imagine.
See, I'm going to jump straight in here, and I think a lot of the ladies are going to agree with me. Chafing thighs and frizzy hair, there's not a lot you can do about that. If you've got chubby thighs like I do, it's a pain. But sweat patches, you can still control that to a certain degree. If it's a really hot day and I'm getting a bit sweaty, I'll go and change my shirt or freshen up, because I don't want people around me having to deal with that. As natural as it is, it's just personal hygiene at the end of the day.
Yep, as always, Lainey, I think, tries to pull down standards for normal human hygiene in public places. And
I think we have just gone about aspects of physical femininity. I think this is.
It's good. I think whatever we're doing on Women's Hour, it's the absolute opposite of what Lainey is doing. Whatever Lainey is trying to build, I'm trying to tear it down, or probably the opposite. Actually, she's trying to tear down whatever we're trying to build. Should we get any more thoughts, or should I get to the next one?
Next one.
Yep.
Your weight might fluctuate, but your worth will not. So we have three ladies here of differing weights, but all of them are probably above what would be ranging from overweight to obese, shall I say. It kind of explains itself.
We've covered this before in terms of, if you're happy and healthy is the main one, then I don't care. But if it's actually affecting your health and you're not seeing it in everyone else's, then it's an issue.
This woman claims to be a feminist, but all she does is tear down
other women,
womanhood and beauty and femininity, and I hate it. This is one of the things that just got to me when I was like younger and kind of becoming interested in politics, and why I hated the society around me so much is they just hate the thing that they claim to love and want to celebrate is this. They hate it, and they just want to destroy anything of worth that a woman can offer in the world. They just hate. They hate it. They hate us.
It's all hate. They hate actual women.
I'd say that Lainey goes to great lengths to point out that she doesn't, that she's not trying, or she's trying to appear not to be tearing down more. Because basically, I think this entire comic, all of these comics have the same thing in common, which is that Lainey, she's what she likes to think of as like a modern woman, but she's a feminist. But she's also very into her appearance, her hair, her makeup, and her clothes. Her fashion sense. She has tattoos, which is kind of non-traditional, but she's trying to justify how you can be feminist and also extremely vain. Would be the running theme.
I feel like a lot of it is
feminism is vanity.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of her comics have the same sort of theme. They rhyme. That it's fine to be obsessed with your appearance, and it's fine to also let yourself go and not be obsessed with that. So she thinks that there are no standards. Like, if you want to hold yourself up to standards, that's fine for you, but you can't do it to anyone else. I'd say it's her philosophy, which used to be my kind of philosophy too for a long time. But these days I'm just getting so tired of it, and now with Women's Hour, I just want to go like, no, these are the standards, and I don't hate you, but I'd also think you should, maybe try a little bit harder.
Her goal is to accentuate the worst aspects of femininity: the narcissism, the solipsism, the laziness, the being self-obsessed, and then to destroy any vestiges of beauty left within.
This comic just says no. Sorry, go on. No does not mean convince me.
See this? I mean, I've already seen a lot of the comments going, "Oh, are you serious?" Da, da, da. I actually agree with this one, because I've had moments, not too personal, I'm going to reveal, but it's been really annoying. And one incident, which was only probably about 6 months ago now, maybe less than that, 5 months ago, sat in the pub with Alex. I was completely covered. I had nothing out, absolutely nothing. I may have had an ankle showing.
An ankle?
An ankle, I know. So scandalous. I had a whole ankle
How dare
showing.
you?
How dare I? Sat having a quiet drink on, I believe it was a Friday night or a Saturday night with Alex, end of week. And this man, he was drunk, asked if he could touch my ass. And I said no. He then tried to convince me that it was a good idea. After saying no about 5 times, he still proceeded to try and do it. So this I agree with completely because it really annoys me.
Yeah,
See,
fair
but the
enough.
thing is you need to look at the undertones as well, because it's like all of these comments kind of have a sort of vibe about them that is like prideful of being a complainer, if that makes kind of sense.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, I get
it's
that.
it's totally one thing to advocate for, like, in the text I was reading a bit, if it's too small for the chat to read, talking about like that she was abused and she had an abuser, and that's one thing to be an advocate for women in that sense. But kind of making it like an aesthetic post, making it all fashionable and trendy, in like having these little slogans that she does, it's just it's honestly sickening.
Yeah, I think she is definitely trying too hard, and there's just been a comment saying he was polite to ask. I did say to him afterwards, said, yeah, credit for asking, but I think you should go home, and he did. So
He was a bit past it, I think, at that point.
yeah, he was definitely past it. Hence why I never made an issue of it, but it was still irritating. I did find it irritating.
This comic does have more parts. I think it's all on the same theme, but so we have no does not mean
These all
convince me.
quotes.
Yeah, rapists rape people, not clothes. I don't even know if we can say that on YouTube, but I just did. So take
a
that,
strong
Susan.
one.
I think it kind of checks for the beginning of a video,
Yeah.
and then after the sort of a bit, it doesn't matter.
So we're safe then.
It is not consent if you make me afraid to say no. I mean, I do agree with that. I mean, all this stuff about, obviously, like, women's ability to say no is very important. And I do hate Lainey.
I think women should have more confidence to be able to say no.
Maybe that'll be a topic for another time, because I just watched a quite good video by the Authentic Observer, who some of you may know was the girl who went after Vaush last week, with hilarious consequences. She's quite a feisty girl, but she had a video out this week about saying no, and about how feminism has kind of eroded women's ability to. It feels like women have to justify why they're not up for having a physical relationship.
I don't particularly agree with a lot of the comment, the sort of this. I don't know if that's maybe a topic for the women's.
Yeah,
hour,
we're coming to the end here.
Yeah,
we have to do super chats as well. I just want to get to the end of this comic. Nobody in the world is owed sex. I agree. No is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Yeah, also agree. In terms of sex, all of these I think are pretty. In terms of how you get dressed, that's another one. The one about clothes, probably something we could talk about. Not completely agreeing with Lainey there, but yeah, women say, if you want to say no, just say no, and that should your no should mean no, in my opinion. And that was the weekly Lainey. Shall we go to super chats, or do we have anything more?
I think we should go to super chats, Poe. I think
Let's do it. The lovely people they've been pouring in. These guys, they love Women's Hour. Brilliant, love to see it. Thank you very much, everybody. Thoughts about the assassination of Shinzo Abe? $2. That was we can talk about that next week, but that was not the winning. That was not the winning topic, and we don't have time to go into it now. Thank you very much, all the same. We got £5 from RCW. I was subverted by Bob Marley. Are women easily subverted by bonking music? That's a pretty outdated term. I believe he means sexualized music, I'd say.
Yes, I think that is what he means. Poe.
Topic for another time, but it was not the highest bidder this week. $5. I watch because I hope to gain a small insight on the women so I can hopefully catch one. Good luck and much success in your endeavour. Well, I hope we'll be able to help you, and any viewer of Women's Hour, we hope to set you up with a nice lady. We hope you find a woman. DRT is king. We got £2 from Evil Ways, with nothing to say. Thank you very much, Evil Ways. £7 from Sir Garnet. Potential topic, thoughts on Mary Whitehouse and what she campaigned for. That is a very good suggestion. Thank you very much, Sir Garnet. But it was not the winning suggestion this week.
I've got one of her autobiographies, which are really difficult to find at the moment. And I plan on making a video or a couple of videos on her at some point. It would be good if we could do a woman's hour on her, because she's I mean, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the things she did, but she's like a really interesting person. And when it comes to like sort of an example of femininity and transmitting it on from one generation to another, she's also an interesting person in that regards as well, because I think she was originally asked to be in sex education, which started off her campaign.
Really? Oh, that's that is interesting. I'd like to talk about it and have a little bit of debate about it. She's certainly a bit more of a complex figure than the Britisher would lead you to believe, for instance. For $9.99, fund from the English Loyalist, thank you, the very loyal English viewer of the channel. Funding for Women's Hour. Duke of Wellington loved intelligent women. Why not? I found it weird that many found Women's Hour a joke. I found it very fun to see a different perspective. Well, thank you very much, the English Loyalist. We do appreciate that. Not just for the money, but also for the kind words. And I think we all love intelligent women, even if it's not quite the same way that men express intelligence all the time. I think it's there's nothing like getting in a conversation with an intelligent woman. I think I find it refreshing to the soul. £8 from Evil Ways. Oh, that was in addition to the £2 before. We'll add those two together to make what I expect is the winning topic of this week. Next week we will be discussing, from Evil Ways, what do you make of the LA culture, namely women making 6 or even sometimes 7 figures on OnlyFans just for showing their bodies. I thought I didn't say bodies for a second. I was going to say something else. So that's what we'll be discussing next week on top of our other topics. Thank you very much, Evil Ways, and well done for being our winner. From Lumberg,
Yay.
Someone in the chat, £5. Best of luck with the relaunched show, ladies. And don't tell AA about this. That goes for everyone watching. Don't tell AA that Lumberg's been donating to the show. And Amy, you have a new video out. Would you like to tell us about that?
No, I don't.
You don't? Oh, I thought you had a new video. Sorry. I saw a link in the chat earlier. I didn't watch it.
Oh, it's an article, a book review I wrote.
Oh, sorry. Yes, yeah. Not a video.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe you put it on your Twitter, didn't you, Amy? Is that correct?
Yes. So it's on Why Now, and it's a review of an essay collection by Zora Neale Hurston, which has just been released, and my opinions on it can be found on my Twitter or on Why Now's main page.
Great. Yeah, go look for that. Sir Garnet has added £2 to his first super chat to try and get it to a winning amount, but I'm afraid Evil Ways has already beaten you to that trick, and he's donated £10, whereas your 7 plus your sorry, what is it? 2 plus 7 is only 9. So you'll have to donate another £1 to get your topic on Mary Whitehouse. But we are interested in your topic, so we'll that's at the bottom of the pile, shall we say? Now, anyone else got something to add? I haven't got any links in the description this week, but I will put the links to Amy's channel, Birdie's Twitter, and Cow's. I believe you have a what is it? A YouTube channel?
I have a Twitter. I have a video of a frog. If anyone would like to see that on
Brilliant.
My channel.
Who on earth would not want to see that?
I definitely want to see that. I want to see the frog.
I'll put a link in the description to the frog. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I had a new video out this week on what on earth was it about? It was about flowers. So Birdie, I hope you watched it, about planting flowers.
I will be actually. I've got it in my playlist on the next to watch. So you are in there, Poe.
Great.
The only shill I've got is there is an open day coming up for the Roby Trust. I will tell you the dates next week because I'm a horrible person and have forgotten them, which is really bad. I believe it is in September though. So I will be telling those dates then. So if anybody does want to come down, say hello, play with the engines, yeah, come and have a look at some steam engines and obviously raise some money for the trust. I will let you know next week.
Cool. Well, thank you very much to my panel, and thank you everyone for watching. Have a very good night, and I will see you around.